Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast with your hosts, Jason Balin and Ian Horowitz.
Ian, what's up, buddy?
What's up, brother?
You still down the beach, or like you say, the shore?
The shore, yeah. You know, we always grew up going to the shore. You guys all say down the ocean.
We don't say down the ocean. We say go to the beach.
Well, that's what down the ocean, hon. That's what everyone in Baltimore says. But
that's what Baltimore says.
Yeah.
DC says, "Are we going to the beach?" And New Jersey, Philly folks say, "Are you going we're going down the shore."
Going to the shore, and then right now I'm worried about. If you see what's going on in the Canary Islands, there's a volcano, and there could be a tsunami if this volcano falls into the ocean. So, of course, now my wife's like flipping out, making sure that we're prepared. I'm like, look, baby, you can't protect for everything. If the tsunami comes, we'll buff it, and it'll be fun.
Dude, after I just finished the book, Living with a Seal, he is prepared for everything. He gave Jesse Isler a freaking rowboat to live in his high-rise in Manhattan in case another 9/11 hits. He can row across row across the Hudson. Told you got to check out that book. It's good.
I got to get that.
Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast, everybody. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers and my co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. Have a really fun show coming up here. I've got a really good, interesting, and insightful guest. We're going to be talking about mobile home investing, which is a new topic for me. I don't know much about mobile home investing, besides I do know some local capital investors that do invest in this asset class. So I'm intrigued and I'm interested to hear more. If this is the first time tuning in to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, welcome. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interactive. We're going to have a good time. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them in the comments section. And if you hear anything that you like, feel free to share it with other real estate investors as well. You know, most of the show is focused on real estate investing, not just in the single family space, but also in the commercial space and the alternative asset space. Today, it's going to be mostly focused on mobile homes. And if you have been following us and watched this podcast over and over and over, thanks for tuning back in again.
Yeah, we've had some good, interesting topics here recently, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity. Someone introduced me to Adrian here recently through another event. That's why we always talk about networking and how important that is. Introduced me to Adrian, and he started telling me that he invests in mobile homes, and I was like, oh, mobile home parks. He's like, no, he literally invests in mobile homes. I was like, okay, so he just buys them and rents a lot? He's like, no. He invests in mobile homes and tries to own the land too. I was like, okay, that's a really unique thing. I think our audience will benefit from this. So enough of me, enough of Jay, and let's just bring Adrian in and find out what's going on.
Adrian, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you guys for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we just start, maybe just give a real quick background about you, and then we'll get kind of going.
All right. Well, I started my real estate investing career as a tenant. And a very terrible tenant. I was being evicted. I was 20 years old. I had a family member that was a mortgage broker. He said, buy a house. This is 18 years ago when you didn't need anything to buy a house. Signed the paper, moved all my friends in. It worked out better than it sounds like it should have, but I lived for free. And then I was like, well, this real estate thing can be pretty cool if I don't have to pay rent. And fast forward, we bought a few more houses, but then I started going to the networking events and RIAs. And I kept hearing people talk about mobile homes. Now, I'm in Central Florida, in between Tampa and Orlando. There's mobile homes everywhere, but we have a ton of them around me. And I basically just started listening to these guys. They're older, wiser than me. They've been doing it longer. So I set up, try a mobile home out, and realized the cash flow was a lot better than the single family home. And through the years, we've been divesting our site-built homes that we were very fortunate to have appreciation in. And now we buy and rent single-unit mobile homes with the dirt. We buy the home and the dirt together and rent them out.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a little bit. You mentioned off camera, there's 3 different ways to invest in mobile homes. Let's start with that for those that don't know, including myself. I'm new to all this.
Yeah, so a lot of people always think there's always lot rent with a mobile home. That's not true. You can buy just the home and you are renting the right to park it there. It can be in a mobile home park. It's what a lot of people think of them as. That's one way to do it. We've done a few of those. You basically buy the home, you fix it up to whatever level you're going to do it, and a lot of people sell it on payments. So you might buy it for $5,000, sell it for $10,000 on payments, whatever your market the numbers are. It might be 10 and selling it for 20. They're good cash flow. You're dealing with the park manager, so you have someone else involved that may not be on your exact team. We don't have any of those anymore. Then you have what we mainly do is we buy the home and the land together. We're buying a real estate transaction, the dirt. For whatever reason, these have gotten forgotten. People think of the cheaper, just the home, or they think of the mobile home park, the entire park. People run those in two different ways. They either have a flat apartment complex, they own the homes and land, or they own a big parking lot. We haven't bought one of those yet, but the big parking lot sounds pretty cool. You just charge people to park their home there.
Yeah, and what I guess, I know one of the things, I don't know if this has been a limitation for you, but the guys that are, and we'll get back to exactly what you do here in a second, but the bigger mobile home parks, like there's a lot of institutional capital and a lot of bigger players trying to chase these like big mobile home parks, right? And is that one of the reasons that maybe you shot away from that?
Exactly. I hear that they're buying usually 100 plus units. We look at them. Honestly, I like to keep things as simple and boring as possible. A mobile home park does have moving parts because you have a manager. You have to deal with it just like multifamily. So that doesn't attract me as much because I like my little forgotten corners of the cities and county that we have our single units in. We're looking, we're picky buyers at this point because we don't have to buy it, and I don't want to create myself another job.
There you go.
What related to and maybe we can break down kind of all three of these, but let's go to the middle one, which you probably know the best because that's what you concentrate on. So explain that buying the home and the land together. So if somebody owns the entire park, does that mean that you go and you buy that subset? Let's say there's 100 trailers in that park or mobile homes. I don't even know the proper term, actually. We could probably discuss that as well. But does that mean that you're buying, if there's 100 trailers in there, do you buy 1/100th of the land? Just the land that it sits under? Is that how it works?
In general, no. In general, what you're talking about, you'd be owning just the home and you don't get the right to buy the dirt. There are a few co-ops where you do own part of the mobile home park and you get the rights to your land. There's not a lot of those out there. This could be, think of your single family, maybe your deed restricted neighborhood, your non-deed restricted, a dead end road, cul-de-sac, and it has all these site built homes on it. The exact same as that, but they're mobile homes. So the difference is the structure that's on the home. That's really the biggest difference. And as far as what to actually call them, it all depends on what side of the deal you're on. If you're buying it, they're all trailers. I don't care what year it is. And if you're selling it, they're all manufactured homes.
All right.
There is some technical years, but you just got to look for your advantage.
And that's what I was just about to ask you. What is the difference between manufactured homes and say, I guess a mobile home or a trailer home is literally if you put it up on its wheels or not, I guess is the big difference. Or
so there are some differences of the years. No one uses the proper terminology. I'd say the biggest thing you want to look out for is the date 1976, June 15th to be exact. That's the year that HUD came out with some real guidelines of you actually have to build these things to a standard. Before that, there were some standards, but it was really loose. And The quality of the material is subpar, we'll say, to keep it nice, on the older than June 15th of 1976, which is why banks will not finance those.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like goes in line with us where we deal with lead paint, right? And we look for that same date to avoid lead paint. And Jay, I was thinking about it when I was talking to Adrian before we came on. It's almost like it's a kind of like a covered land play, right? Like so Adrian, you're looking for a good piece of land, and rather than go through this whole process of trying to build some big home on it, you're saying, well, I could just bring in a prefab home or I can find a prefab home that's already there, renovate it, or lease it out. Like that's your whole goal here?
Yeah, I mean, my number one goal is cash flow. That's really what I look at, is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. But I will look at, what do I think the land's going to be worth? Because you can rebuild mobile homes as long as you don't let the roof leak. Just like a house, you let the roof leak for years, you're going to have mold and everything. On a mobile home, the older ones, they really do kind of start melting. They got particle board. So it can be pretty difficult to bring something like that back to life. But if that happened, if a hurricane, you guys were talking about the possible volcano. I'm in Florida. We get hurricanes all the time. So if a hurricane takes it and throws it somewhere else, that's one of the options I like to have, is selling it to a builder. Or I can always bring a new one on or a used one. But I love the option to be able to sell it to a builder that wants to put a $250,000, $500,000 house on it. And believe it or not, there are neighborhoods that have been slowly converting over, or even, we'll say, full sections of town, and then there's 2 streets that still have mobiles on it. We own one like that, and those are the only streets that don't have $500,000 houses.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you know what? And maybe the misconception that maybe I had, because we don't see a lot of those here. Sorry.
Because he doesn't leave DC. He doesn't leave DC. That's why. Go on, keep going.
Not accurate. Is when you hear mobile home investing, you think of mobile home parks, not necessarily a single mobile home. And there's and Ian, just so you know, there's mobile homes in every community.
Sure
all over the place here, because I see them all, because I get loan requests on them all the time, and I know exactly where they are in every county in our states. So, but the thing is a lot of them, I guess the misconception is, I want to invest in mobile home parks, but really your model is more, I mean, not that maybe you don't do that, but your model is more a mobile home, right? So, yeah. Okay. So that makes sense.
When it's the older ones like that, I really look at the land value. I buy based on cash flow first, but I still want to make sure that most of the value is in the land. When we were heavily accumulating, we bought everything pretty close to what the property appraiser deemed the land to be worth, which is low around me. Now if there was some land that we bought with a mobile home on it that I thought there was a really good chance of the builder coming out, like the one I mentioned in the middle of all the $500,000 houses, I paid more for that because I still cash flow, but I paid more because I know I have a good chance of getting cashed out.
Yeah, and you keep hitting the cash flow. I mean, so for us here, pre-COVID, our average was, you could get into a house. We have a lot of inventory here in Baltimore. For me, anyway, I could be all in on a house for $100,000, and we would get $1,250 rent. Kind of like what the wheelhouse is. It's worth, somewhere around $150, something like that. What does a mobile home deal standard look like for you? And we know you're in Central Florida, but what's rent, acquisition price, and what's cash flow look like for you?
All right, and I'm glad you're sitting down. Earlier this year, I bought one for $50,000 from a wholesaler. He made 10, so I bought it for 50. My closing cost and my repairs were about $9,000, so I'm all in at 59, and I got rented at $1,250 a month, which is actually under rent. And it's a double lot.
Wow. So you could actually potentially put a second home on there for $59,000. Well,
if something happens to this one, I can. But the way it's structured, set in the lots, it's on both lots, so I can't do it. But I have that option if something happened.
Yeah. One of our biggest problems here is everything's expensive to close too. Welcome to the Mid-Atlantic. Now, with that being said, so a deal like that, conceivably you could pay, as my wife dances around the kitchen, she doesn't think I'm going to put her on blast. We're live right now. But anyway, for $59,000, conceivably someone could pay cash for that. But is there bank financing for these types of things?
Well, when you get older than this 1976, I have not found a bank that will finance them, and it becomes cash. And when someone has 50,000 cash or even less, more, doesn't matter. Our society's taught people to put that down on a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 house, not to buy a free and clear trailer. So my competition is other investors, and the few people that have some cash or their uncle's going to loan them some money to buy the home. On the older ones, those are my competition. So that's the 60s and 70s. you can get financing on an 80s, 90s, newer, but you got to go to a small local bank. The big boys, they don't want to touch anything that's older than 20 years. And they all want everything brought up to the code for your area. For us, we have pretty strict code for the tie down and straps because of the hurricanes we get all the time, which is, it's a good thing they have that strict code.
Right.
Is it a common practice by you to potentially just buy land and then put new mobile homes, manufactured housing, maybe not manufactured, that might be the wrong term. Let's just call it mobile homes on that land? Like, could you put 4 on one piece of land? Is that by code to even do that?
A lot of municipalities do not like the idea of building mobile home parks, and basically anything over 2 is a mobile home park in their eyes. But let's talk about the single unit. You get a vacant land and you're putting one on there. You could, and I know people that do that, and it's a good little niche. I like to think of myself as a lazy investor, and that's a lot of work. I have to coordinate with the permitting department, the buying and moving it. So I don't do that. But I will buy the the land and sell it to someone that's going to put a home on it. So let's say someone is going to put a brand new home on it. I go to the manufacturer, the sales reps there, and I call them up and say, hey, I got an acre of land. It's in this area. It's this price. Or, hey, how much do your people want to pay for it? Because it gets wrapped into their financing.
Yeah, that definitely all makes sense. And it's a unique way. I think a lot of people get, like you say, talk about people conventional and saying, well, if you got 50 grand, you should go buy a $200,000 house. And yes, I've been with one of your mentors, Ken, who we always go back and forth on, do you go all cash or do you go debt? Right. We always have back and forth on these things. And it is something unique that, having something free and clear means a lot. Even if it's only 59 grand, guess what? You own that thing free and clear. And if you decide later on that you want to build that house, well, now you got the land is free. I think it's a really interesting play. And I'm surprised by Jason's comment of there's a lot of mobile homes near us. I guess we don't put it into context, maybe the same way that you're presenting it right now. But I can think of a few. Actually, there's a place right by me that manufactures homes. I think Warren Buffett's doesn't he own one of the biggest home prefab homes? Yeah.
Clayton Homes, yep. Exactly.
So it's probably more popular than most people think. Is there any kind of like different insurance requirements? Like if there's one thing that you would have to tell people that like, this is your number one pitfall, this is what you got to watch out for. Like what would that be when it comes to investing in mobile homes?
Can I give it more than one?
Sure. Go ahead. Right. Yeah.
So when it comes to insurance, you do need to check your local insurance companies because around me, they're not going to insure older than 1980 with hurricane coverage. If I go out to the beach, to St. Pete Beach, I don't know exactly what they do there because I don't invest there, but I guarantee they're not going to do a 1980. Closer we get to the beach because of the hurricanes, you can't get the hurricane coverage. So that's why you really want to check with some local reps. And foremost, insurance is usually who your insurance agent is going to get it through. Very old, we can get insurance, but it's not going to get us named storm coverage. So if they name this volcano or whatever, I think that's why they name all these storms, so that the insurance companies. So you want to look out for that. I already alluded to the tie downs and piers. That's how it's anchored physically to the ground. You want to look out for that if you plan to resell it to someone that is going to get bank financing. If you're not, the insurance company might care. We don't care if it's up to code, but we want to make sure that they haven't rusted away and they're actually there because you want to keep your tenant occupant safe and your asset there. The others, I just want to blank on one of the other typical questions. Moving them. Mobile homes are not that mobile. People are always asking me, or giving me a lead. The wholesaler's like, well, you can just move a new one on there. The cost of moving them, I just had a friend do it for a single wide was $8,700 for the permits and move and setup. And they still would have to get an AC unit if they're going to do that, or the window units. They have a chance of it getting damaged on the way. If it's a really old lot and you have septic, you're probably going to have to bring the septic up to code. you might have to talk to a neighbor and trim some trees or convince them to let you bring it down over their road. If you have an old one on there, $3,500 to have it just hauled to the dump.
Right.
You start adding up really quick, and you're $20,000-$30,000 in to get a 1990 on there.
Right. Yeah, no, and it's interesting that you bring up about transport and all that other stuff. Jay, I was talking to Jimmy Harris, someone else that we've interviewed on here that's a close friend of ours. He's a new home builder. He actually went to basically, it's almost the same thing, like a prefab. It's built in production in a manufacturing site. They haul it there and then they piece it together. And one of the problems he did have was during transport, a lot of the sheetrock cracked, which is normal. And I think people could understand that. So yeah, those are all interesting points because I like watching people, wholesalers saying, "Oh, just put a new mobile home on there." Like it's nothing. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of permits. There's a lot of things that we got to jump through.
Let's go through Eric's questions real quick. Thank you, Eric, for asking this. Do you rent these traditionally, or do you offer lease options or rent to owns?
We do a little bit of both. We like to do them as just rentals, but if it's going to be a very high maintenance property, let's say a 1962 that is in so-so shape, those I like to do as a rent to own, because then the handyman, handywoman that hopefully is going to take the place, they're going to go and do those repairs. If I love the land, the dirt, though, I will make the repairs because what we were talking about earlier of basically investing in the dirt. So it really depends on the property. You do have to deal with Dodd-Frank with this. Most municipalities, I think states, it's 3 that you can do before you get a loan originator. And we use the lease with the option to help separate that out. So let's say we have 3 scheduled to go this year. I would then do a 13-month or maybe an 18-month lease before they have the option to buy it. And then we could possibly talk about financing it to them.
I guess you get Dodd-Frank because, Jay, I guess, right? Because consumer loans?
Yeah,
It's technically
he's doing a mortgage. I mean, seller financing is technically a mortgage. So yeah, and a lot of states you can do 0 to 3 without a license. But a lot of that case law has changed over the last few years. But back in the day, 15 years ago, you didn't have mortgage originator licenses and things like that. But they didn't really care as much. But yes, any and this doesn't even relate it to mobile homes. This is related to everything. And a lot of people don't realize that when you're doing seller financing in multiple states, potentially you could be in a gray area if you don't have an originator's license.
Adrian hit an interesting point. He comes from the Life and Air boys, and they always say, well, we're lazy investors or we're this or that, right? I guess can you go down the road of like, where do you see investing in mobile homes taking you, and why is it so easy? Why does it allow you to be, quote unquote, a lazy investor? Like, what is the advantage by doing mobile homes, say, over a single family rental?
It's really the cash flow. Ken, that's who you mentioned connected us. He helped me realize that what I want at this moment in my life is cash flow, because that's how we eat, pay the bills, travel. And if I can set up the business with the least amount of me being there day-to-day work and still get cash flow, that's been our goal. If I start out with a few $1 million, it'd be easy because you just give it to someone and ask, you give it to Jason and say, hey, just give me a return, go lend it out. Well, we didn't start that way. And we found that mobile homes have such a good cash flow. We could either use our cash and get really good returns, 2, 3, 4 times what we were getting on a site built, or we can bring in a private money and say, hey, you're going to fund the whole thing, and then we're going to get part of the cash flow. And we did that through some of our growth. We even left closing with some checks, and they funded the whole thing, and we still got part of we kept the asset. We owned them the money later, right, but we got some of that cash flow, and that was really helpful for accelerating our growth. But it's really just the monthly cash flow, not the sexy item that you want to put a picture on Facebook, the $500,000, $750,000 house. I'd rather be at the beach checking my bank account than in front of a nice, shiny,
of course,
$750,000 house.
Yeah, of course. It's all about cash flow, and hopefully having equity in some of this land in the future as well. What kind of day-to-day operations has to occur? Forget marketing. I mean, I understand. All of us are. Hey, we're lazy investors, but I recognize you work hard. I'm not going to discredit you for that because I know what it takes. We all know what it takes, right? Like, so. Besides marketing operations and stuff like that, kind of as a business owner, let's on a per deal basis, or do you have a management, not a management, do you have a full-time maintenance person that if something breaks, they can fix that? How is that kind of set up, how details?
The mobile homes are not really any different. Once you learn, there's a few pieces that are different as in how to fix them, but I believe it's the person that you move in the home and the area that you buy in that dictates how much maintenance and repairs you're going to have more than the actual structure. We do have a full-time office manager. We brought her on earlier this year. She started out just answering the phones and has moved up. Stay-at-home mom. That frees me up a lot to be able to do other things that I really enjoy. Looking for a deal. She's way better at when there's a process. Most of us entrepreneurs are like, oh, let's do this. Oh, let's do this. And we're all over the place. We're the Imagineer.
Right.
And she's the perfect person for that seat. That we create a process, her and I, and then she does it. And she sticks to it the same every time. So we're way more efficient than whenever I was taking care of all that. And we did that very slow. I never wanted to hire someone. I never thought I'd have an employee, actual W-2. But it slowly grew to that. And I realized, it's the best thing for my life, and it's blessing her life.
Yeah, and I think so. Me and Jay have talked about. We talk a lot about this stuff offline, right? About business growth in general, and it's I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in real estate, it's really easy just to keep buying, and next thing you know, you're managing a portfolio, and you're not doing your highest and best use of finding deals or raising capital or whatever it may be. That you lose sight of it, and then everyone's like, "Oh, I'm not really happy on board." Or whatever, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. And I think that's great that you took the time to recognize that, you weren't doing what your highest and best use of time was, and you found someone to, put them in there. And I think a lot of people go into investing in real estate with the intention of not having some huge team. But nowadays, I think with everyone being able to virtual work and a few other things, that it makes life a lot easier to have employees potentially all over this country or world to help you manage the portfolio and not have a traditional type office.
I totally agree. We'll get tenants that say, well, we can just meet at your office. And we're like, well, we work out of home because we're trying to keep costs down so that we can also keep your rent pretty fair.
Right.
As well.
Yeah, that's a great passer. And I think something else that you had mentioned that applies to all assets of real estate, another thing that me and Jay like to talk a lot about offline, is you start here, right? And then your goal is always to work up and buy the best asset you can for the money that you have. And you hit the nail on the head. Well, your maintenance and your headaches are in relation to where you buy your properties and the demographic of what you're renting to. And I think mobile homes get this bad notion of, oh, that's where everyone does, mobile home parks. It's where all the bad stuff. Think about Eminem, right? 8 Mile, when he's living in the mobile home, that's probably what everybody thinks, right? And you're saying, well, no, it's something completely different. So
yeah, we buy where people want to live, not where they have to live.
Right.
And I learned that lesson the hard way. I didn't make money, but I bought in an area that I did not feel safe almost for myself driving down there. So my rule now is if I don't feel safe sending my wife there alone in the evening, I don't buy it.
Yeah, our rule always was when we first started was, okay, if we were single and we had to live here, would we live here? All right, great, cool. We buy still some sketch stuff, but sometimes you got to do it. But Jay's like, everything's sketch to Jay. That's inside the Baltimore circle. So
it's all relative.
Yeah, it is very relative. Glenn's got a good question up here. Jay, you want to take that one?
That's not necessarily true. I mean, listen, it's whatever works. I mean, Adrian said it perfectly. He said, if I start with a few $1 million, I could have, my business model would have been different than it was. A lot of people want to start with really high cash flow properties and deal with the headaches and deal with it because they don't have staff to put in place. They don't have resources to put in place, they're going to do it themselves and they work up. I mean, there's time and money, right? And at the beginning, there's no money and there's lots of time. And then as we all extend our careers, there's little time and more money, and that you can throw at it. So it's all kind of relative. Let's put up Glenn's question. Do you have any options for private lenders to help fund mobile home deals?
Yeah, we've done that before. I think the term private lenders has really gotten stretched recently, years. We've lent our IRA money and we borrowed from it from people that we really do know, not someone that we met in a Facebook group. We actually have real conversations. And I think if there is a challenge for borrowing private money, you have to also educate them on mobile homes. They already have to understand the idea of lending, and then give them the idea of mobile homes to make them feel secure. And that's how we fund most of our stuff. We do probably a third cash, a third seller financing, or I like to call it seller payments because I don't like to imply interest. And then a third of them are private money.
Yeah, I can see that. I would guess seller financing or seller payments, just like, the storage stuff that Ian does a lot of stuff with. It's common. And I feel like that used to be the case in the single family world and the multifamily world. It's harder now, obviously, with that, there's maybe more of a sophistication, or there's just a lot more resources in that world. But, the interesting part of self-storage, which, Ian told me about that I was always attracted to, was that such a large part of of that business is still mom and pop owned. And, it's different. Like residential real estate, you throw out MLS and it sells no matter what market you're in, as long as it's priced accordingly. But I'm guessing that your types of mobile homes or just the land, in some markets, that thing can be listed for years and never sell, right? And then you come in there with a creative approach and kind of make it work. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to add to that. I think one reason it's been a little easier to get seller financing or payments is because a lot of the homeowners that live in them, that's how they bought. So it's not this brand new topic like, why don't you just go to a bank? They purchased it that way. So when I bring it up that I can pay them exactly what they're asking for, if I can make them payments, it's not just a quick hard no.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do you have in mind? And we sit down and figure out something that works for both of us.
And also there's really not a lot. It's a lot less mortgages in those compared to everything else. It's easy to get a mortgage, potentially even 100% mortgage on, a regular single family house. So that's very, very different because, they're used to kind of being in like the no bank zone anyways. Yeah. So it's interesting. And I'll tell you, like when we started this conversation, I was kind of under the impression that these were mobile home parks when I didn't even think about this approach at all. It makes a lot of sense to me.
And Jason, I don't know why that is, because that is extremely common. People think of parks, and they have gotten popular recently, similar to what Ian said about the self-storage. Is a lot of mom and pops owning them. And then the other one is I think it's because they're really cheap, buying just the home and renting it. But for whatever reason, this middle ground of owning the home and the land, the single units, has just gotten forgotten about. And I think, that's how we made our money, and there's still money to be made there. But if someone can find that next thing that was forgotten about, the self-storage has been growing the last few years, the mobile home parks, what I'm doing, there's something else out there that's been forgotten about. And if you can be one of the first ones in there, you can make a lot of money.
Well, and Ian, real quick, and then hop in. But I actually think models like yours, models like self-storage in general, are going to be even better moving forward as if the market shifts. If the market shifts, there's less financing available, right? That's even a better thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're going to stick to, if it's hard to get mortgages or it's not as common right now, it might be non-existent in in the future as things change. So that actually could really, really help even more.
Yeah, and I think there was something else that I was going to mention is an interesting fact that I heard when I was out traveling the Midwest, Southeast. was some guy, we were looking at a storage facility. He's like, hey man, you should buy this mobile home park. You know, it was like a 20 unit site. And I was like, nah, it's not my thing. And something he brought up is that a lot of older Americans don't want the big single family houses anymore. They want to downsize, and a manufactured or a mobile home is actually a really good option for them because of the cost, exactly what we're talking about. So I think you're going to have additional inventory or additional opportunity going forward to even potentially sell these things. You guys are in I'll not get political, Jay, I promise, but Florida seems to have it together right now, and there's a massive move down to Florida. So I think you'll have some good opportunities later on here shortly. Eric's got another question, Jay.
Yeah, let's do one more question, and then we can wrap it up. Do you just buy the land and put trailers on them, or do you only buy land with a trailer included already?
We talked about this a little bit earlier, a tiny bit. We like to be where we're buying the home and land together, and it goes on that laziness thing. I like to do the least amount of work. You can buy the home and buy the land separate and move them. I know a guy that does that. I feed him my leads for just the home that needs to be moved. I get a little bit of money, but I don't do any of the work. With the land, I like to buy that and then resell it. I'll throw it out there because you pay almost no taxes on a vacant piece of land. You can sit on it a little bit longer, and it's usually pretty low dollar. So we actually own some land now. I haven't even seen the land. We'll do a little bit of that. Doing the work of putting it all on there, there's not many people doing it. So what we just touched on, not many people are doing it. If you learn how to do it, make that your little niche, you're going to get people even in the space like me saying, hey, can we partner together, or can I just send you these leads and you give me some money if you can make some money? You got to find those little niches.
Why do you have an idea why people are just buying the land but not putting the trailers on them? Or like, because to me that makes sense, right? You're buying a piece of land that ultimately isn't very marketable right now for, because probably it's only like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense for me to put a home building on that, a spec house on it, right? Because it's just the numbers don't back out. I don't even know the cost of a trailer, a single wide or a double wide, but what do they cost? $25,000? Is that accurate?
No.
Is that too low? High?
No, you might be able to find a single wide for the upper 60s.
All right, 60 grand. So let's say
that might be the lower end starting place.
See, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably mainly ignorance. I don't know. I know very broad of the process. I don't like to have to go and pull the permits and do all the government regulation and talking, and it involves a lot of that. I'm sure if I had a coach on it or I went and learned it all, it wouldn't be that intimidating. But there's moving parts. I like to buy something that I even don't have to do much rehab to it, and within a week I have a for rent sign out. That's a lot less work, and I'll take maybe a small hit on cash flow. I want easy, quick. I can do that from the beach, from the mountains, from my cell phone.
And thinking through that makes sense, because you can, like you just said, that doesn't make sense because a lot of these have very little land value to begin with potentially at the beginning, right? And if you're buying a trailer that was 60 grand or 70 grand, and now you're picking up the whole thing for $30,000, $40,000. Yeah, I think in this case that does make a little bit more sense than maybe, why be a home builder when you can just renovate an existing home? And the home builders can create a lot more margin that way. But in this business model, I do get it. That makes sense.
Yeah, I would assume it's tax base. Your tax base stays low based on the type of building that's on there, right?
That's a really good point. Yeah, for sure.
Not a ton of value. There's one more question, but before we get to that, I don't want to exclude Jay here. We were talking about financing. Jay, is this something that you guys ever financed hard money loan on a local mobile home? No?
I haven't.
Interesting.
And you're the normal, Jay. That's what I hear a lot. That means less people can get into it, and it leaves more for me.
Yeah,
that's why private money and everything is so important, because if no one's financing it, who can buy it?
Yeah, and I don't get a lot of opportunities like that. I mean, the ones actually that I get, it actually comes from slightly ignorant investor who doesn't realize it's a mobile home because that's common. I mean, there's a lot of really nice ones that you don't even realize it until I start doing due diligence on it and say, hey, listen, like this is the case. These things are only going to typically trade in cash. You're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to get but it's going to be harder, I should say, to get a bank to do a long-term debt on it.
Yep.
Listen, we've financed some funky things over the years, and at the right numbers to the right person, it could make sense too. But I just don't get a lot of those opportunities. All right, last question by Kevin. What would be the farthest distance you would consider a property you would manage starting out or having systems in place? I guess
30 minutes. I'm a strict 30 minutes. That doesn't mean at this point I wouldn't be a partner in something that's a little further out, but I would not be the one driving out there and doing the day-to-day work. It was a little difficult to set that boundary as that we were growing. My wife kept saying, well, what's 45 minutes? And I'm like, well, you're not driving it. I am.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy I set that boundary. I have a friend that he had 8 hours he would buy within.
Whew.
Each direction. And I mean, he's done some phenomenal deals. I mean, that's a full day of work just to get to the property. And I think you would neglect the property more, or you might take a week or two to even go see it to see what your scope of work's going to be. It just didn't fit my vision to go more than 30 minutes.
And that's fair. When we started single family, everything had to be in Baltimore just because it was local. We could see it, feel it, touch it. Buying residential properties outside of our primary market within an hour radius is not likely for us just because we have some staff with service guys and, in-house manager and, a director of operations that, we can service a little more. We could do an hour radius, but there's just certain asset classes that don't lend to distance. And I think residential is hard unless you know who your property manager is going to be. I think mobile home parks, though, there could be a debate that you could go a little bit further out with boots on the ground and a few other things, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with storage. Everyone's like, well, why storage? Well, storage is working for us because it gives us market diversification because we can manage from afar or have a third-party property manager that allows us to get out and about. And I think that's something that you would see in the mobile home park versus the one-off. Yours is more like single-family residential than it is more like a multifamily or a storage facility, like a park would be. So
totally agree.
Where's the best place? I mean, this was awesome. I know we were having some conversation. Well, what can we talk about with mobile homes? And this conversation's gone all over the place, which has been awesome. Where's the best place people can find you?
I'm on Facebook mainly. You can look me up. I'm also on Instagram. I don't get on there as much. Well, the easiest place to find where I'm at is adriansmude.com. If you're listening to that, it's ADRIAN, S, M as in Mary, U, D as in dog, E.com. And my websites are all linked to there. I built a little landing page and send me a message. Happy to help.
Yeah, man, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And we hopefully have you back here soon. So.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Adrian. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.